What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Jayta Rhedman. Now Jada is a contact activist who has engaged in many independent contact events and developed his insights based on observations related to UFO and ET studies. Now, his work is in promoting contact as a way to expand consciousness and encourage a greater spiritual and larger outlook for humanity. Now, Jada joins me now to discuss his experience with Dynamic Anomalous Aerial Forms and his observations regarding their complexities. Jayta Rhedman, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's great to have you on, Jada. Now, if you were explaining the basic concept or ideas of what you do, how would you explain that?
Mm-hmm. Well, there might be a few, when they hear it, the basic idea of it, they might already have an idea of a name for it, because there's people that have different terminology. Some people are engaged in what they call CE5. Most of your listeners are probably familiar with that. CE5 is just a process whereby you're initiating contact with a presumed non-human intelligence, and you get visual affirmation or confirmation of that through sky watching. I learned of the term summoning when I started out, so I just call it summoning or connecting. So my YouTube name is Sky Family Connector, and that's a key part of it, because what I do is involves a specific aspect of consciousness, the psychical realm, to be specific. So I'm a lay researcher in the regard of trying to just analyze what it is, what's happening on different levels of the phenomena.
And you've captured a lot of this on video as well. When did you first start to sort of videotape or record, shall I say, this type of phenomena?
Yeah, wasn't until about 8 or 9 months after I had almost daily contact. I just wasn't a camera person, and didn't have a smartphone. So I had binoculars, so I would just go out and practice and get views with my binoculars. So I'd say 8 months after my first contact, which occurred in March 2017.
So this is a sort of interview based on the perspective of the anomalous phenomena. And with this type of phenomena, we were just speaking off air as well about this. I had a previous guest, which I'll link below as well, Trevor James Constable, which talked about this type of contact where you sort of call in the contact, that some of the UFO phenomena actually may be way beyond what we think it is, and this is actually an intelligent biological type of phenomena as well.
Yes, I've heard that put out by Trevor Constable. He was one of the first researchers I ran into. I guess I can't remember how that went, whether I found him after seeing that some people were interpreting these as creatures. I know that my first interpretation I had was of something organic or biological. So I guess that led me to Constable, but made him very unique in the field, certainly from his time and in the contemporary even.
Absolutely, yeah. I was saying to you off air there that he was a lovely man, and there was no sort of ego with this guy, and it was such on the fringe of this subject in a sense, but so many people understood it. Do you know what I mean? That they've had these personal experiences where personally you could be, and tell me if I'm wrong here, stood next to someone looking at the same area in the sky-ish, right? But one person sees something and the other person is not seeing it quite the same. And, it's almost like, you're summoning in that experience. So when you summon these things, or when you started to realize that you had the ability to summon them, what was it about where you were in that particular moment that enables you to bring these into your reality in a sense?
Well, I suppose it woke something up that was dormant within me, which was a childlike fascination for the cosmos. But I hadn't really paid much attention to it over the years. So through a few very suggestive and synchronistic occurrences, it kind of just fell into my lap. But I could trace those occurrences, and they were very stark. So that gave me an indication again of some type of psychic connection, almost as if something was wanting me to discover this, because of all of the type of weird connections that happen in that very first period. It was quite profound. And it's all added to the phenomena.
Absolutely, it has. And you would class this as ultra-terrestrial sightings. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah, I would call it ultra-terrestrial simply because I feel like that's a more safe terminology to use than extraterrestrial, simply because I have no indication that what I'm seeing is extraterrestrial. In fact, I've had no direct communications. I'm not a channeler, and I haven't had any kind of actual messages given to me or answers, and I've asked, but and so I'm left to try to broaden my scope and think, well, this phenomena could be part of the Earth, for all I know, because what I identify is of a plasma nature, and sometimes of a what I call a telekinetic or teleportation phenomenon.
Yeah, and as I said before, these are sort of living UFOs in a sense. That's what we think they are.
They sure exhibit a lot of behaviors that would mimic the idea of a organic or just a sentient being. Yeah.
I want to get into, how these are teaching us through sort of, imagination and intuition. But first of all, so how do you sort of initiate a sighting then when you go outside?
Mm-hmm. I guess the formal way would be the easiest route, right? I try to ask people, what would you do if you wanted to initiate? What would be the first things you would think of? And maybe focusing, maybe asking politely to see something, but directing it, being very intentional with that. That's about it. That's really about it. So that aspect really astounded me too, the accessibility. And I knew it wasn't just me because I learned from another. You know what I'm saying? So the accessibility concept that you just ask, and with some interest in your heart, with that intention, and my intention, or I'd like to say my emotional level at that moment, in those early days, in those first moments, were very high. I was very stoked. I could feel my, adrenaline, and that kind of stuff. So, whereas other people might not have had that, and that might have been one of the elements that made it so repeatable, accessible for me specifically. It was the very first day. It was simply a matter of asking and curiosity and really wanting to know, and it happened.
Yeah, and absolutely, and you've been capturing it pretty much ever since as well. And again, there's, as you said, there's no direct communication or evidence of extraterrestrial. So that's why we've mentioned the name ultra-terrestrial in this interview.
Yes.
But has there ever been any sort of psychic connection with him in any sort of sense? Do you think any conscious connection in any sort of sense?
Not in any cognitive way, other than to say that the synchronistic occasions clearly showed me that there was a pathway being made for me. Let's put it that way, and that was totally out of my control. Totally not within my. It was synchronistic. It was truly a series of concentrated events, all within a couple of weeks that led me to believe that this is like actually answering some of the primordial questions that I had in the first days. I recalled the questions. It was like it was reminding me, remember, you asked these questions, so careful what you're asking for.
Well, let's go to those sort of those phases in your life that set up to sort of start to look at the sky, seeing these ultra-terrestrial. So there's I believe there are 3 phases to this in a sense.
Okay, yeah. Well, there was there was a few questions I had based on a year prior to my first event. I just got hooked on some videos about consciousness, specifically free will. I was just kind of hooked. I had never asked the questions, and I was listening to academics speak about the concept of free will. Kind of my late introduction into philosophy. I mean, and I was hooked, and for a year I was sharing that, these discussions with friends, and we were musing over them. So it was really filling up in me all the possibilities around consciousness, and leading up to the final days before my first contact, I had a friend who came over, and we were watching Magician, David Blaine. And we kind of got into a little argument, my friend being more kind of conservative over what he would call what we would call phenomenological, paranormal. And so he just kind of felt like it was all a sham, and David Blaine had no ability. But something in my mind was not ready to discount it all straight away like that. And I think, looking back, it's not whether the man is or isn't real magician. It's what was in my mind about it. It was just the imaginal in my mind that it could be true, that actual meta-phenomenological reality based events could happen, and that humans can be aware of this and somehow be in more control of it. was something that just opened up something within me. So that was number 2, the magician event. And then finally we're musicians. So we were thinking about performing and just doing a duet and looking through music. And finally we decided to play around with the song, The Logical Song by Supertramp. I don't know how many singers, how many listeners know it, but at the end it has this refrain, and it's very heartfelt, asking, tell me who I am, who I am, who I am, and it just hit me the night we played it together. It hit me so hard, and I'd heard it thousands of times before that, but in this moment, it hit me. It grabbed my heart, and I was like, "Wow, man! Can you really listen to those lyrics? Listen to that message." And I think there was 1, 2, 3 right there. That was the third thing, and 3 is a charm. And I felt something in the room changed. My friend kind of just left. It was very strange leaving, and I was left with my own thoughts, and I was just buzzing. Then the very next day was I got this video that talked about summoning these, which actually I had seen many years prior. It was this prophet Yahweh, he called himself, and and those videos came from, I think, 2005 or 6, and I had seen them many years earlier too, but it just popped up in my feed. And I looked at it again, and I was interested, but again, I wasn't intrigued to follow what this person was presenting, because it was more of a religious nature. But I noticed at that moment that there were others. There were plenty of other recommended videos on the side on YouTube of people doing the same thing, and so I went and opened those up, and I found Robert Bingham. And Robert Bingham had this easy, step 1, 2, 3, 4, no religious invocation necessary, and that was it. I went outside right at that moment, because I just felt like, okay, I'm not wasting any more time, and this is the moment. Everything kind of just dovetailed and came to a pinpoint ahead at that moment, and I got that first sighting, and it was at night.
Hey guys, look, sorry for interrupting this interview right now. I just need less than 1 minute of your time. You may know I'm currently working on a documentary that's going to shine some light on the subject of discernment and why discernment is so important in this field. I'm working on the documentary titled Captain Mark Richards, A Murder in Camelot, and this is going to be a mini-series. It's going to investigate the many claims of the whistleblower called Mark Richards, who claims that he's a political prisoner and was framed for the murder of his friend Richard Baldwin. This is all due to the time that he spent in the secret space program. Now, Mark is the top whistleblower for the conspiracy theorist Kerry Cassidy, and she regards Mark as the most important whistleblower exposing the secret space program so far. So I've recorded 23 interviews for the documentary, but what's missing is the contribution of some key players involved with the story, and I'd like to use actors to sort of recreate some of these key players and some major plot scenes. So if you feel drawn to donate and to help, your support means the world, and the link to donate is in the description below, or just go to captainmarkrichards.com, click the banner at the top of the page, and enjoy the rest of the show, and thank you for your support. Yeah, and what do you think that's done for you up to this point now, in a sense?
I'd say the process has really kind of refined a lot of aspects of who I am, because I've committed to kind of making a spiritualizing the process, expanded consciousness, more fine-tuning of our consciousness, observation, being very observant of yourself, mindfulness. So it's kind of invited all of these other modalities that have to do with consciousness, because it kind of just creates the vehicle for that. If you want to be linked in consciousness with another entity telepathically, well, it kind of stands to reason that you would want to fine tune that ability so that you could have more and greater communication, greater connection. And that's just what I've done. I've felt like it's kind of an aesthetic kind of practice of observation and contemplation, because each event seemed to have similar impulses to them, similar things that were well, they had triggers. The triggers were always kind of I could tell when a trigger was happening, and then something would show up, even if I'd been out already for quite some time. Something in the head would stir, and I would feel it in the moment, based on a thought or based on a feeling, and then it would show up. So that kind of just reckoning with the mind and being able to see what works, what doesn't, what if any messages one can glean out of the different impressions that you're putting forward and the responses that you get.
And really, I mean, you've kind of answered this, but some of those messages are that there is something more, right?
Yes.
And that I've heard before from people that the spirit world is around us in a sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not up there in the sky or somewhere else. That
Right.
We are living in a multi-dimensional reality in a sense.
And I think some of the studies right now in consciousness, parapsychology, are confirming that. That we are inextricably linked as a species through consciousness. Shendrake's work on a morphogenic field, the concept of these are very kind of all somehow part of the synchronous universe, and that synchronous universe is kind of what it's saying. We're all synced, we're all one, synchronized. There is a oneness factor, and it kind of teaches us, it kind of helps us along to embody that, at least in the events, in the practices, as process as it goes. Helps you to be an embodiment of that concept rather than just concept.
Absolutely. And with your partner as well, how has that affected her with what you're doing, or do you guys see these things together, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, it brought us together. Basically, we were not together as partners before this event, but we got so drawn into it. So she's been great support, and she's been included in a lot of the events. She doesn't take it in the same way. We have different. I'm the one who really initiates, but she really loves it. She really loves it, and she pours her insight into it, and that has helped us. It's just helped our relationship to be much more robust, as this adds a part where we can dream together, we can ask the profound questions together. Really, that's another good thing. Yeah,
that's beautiful. That is beautiful. So let's just this is not a kind of CE5 initiation in a sense, neither, right? Because that's a bit of a buzzword, isn't it, out there?
Right. And it wasn't until a few months later, after my first contact, that I was even aware of Stephen Greer and the CE5 protocol. That for some reason I just didn't come across it. My video searches had summoning, and I didn't see much CE5, or if I did, I must have skipped over them. But it wasn't. But I remember that it wasn't until at least a couple months, 2-3 months after my first contact, that I even knew about CE5 as a thing.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And I'm not saying that CE5 does not work. I'm saying that this is just this is your way of initiating the contact.
Right.
And this is a contact that's, would you say, is it scheduled by choice?
What do you mean?
Well, can you can you go out and, if you're in the right vibe, in putting out the right energy, that you can bring these things into
Oh, yes.
visualization. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yes. I would say very much so. And part of the evidences that speak to that also have to do with wherever you are, whenever you are, and wherever you are, because that's happened across state lines for me, multiple states. So the same thing happens.
And also, then, what about the sort of animal connection as well with all this? Is there one, do you think?
I intuit that there is one. I definitely had a strong attraction to animals, a couple of animals specifically. When I first had my contact, it was like I really let myself just go where my vibe was leading me, and animals just kept popping up in my mind, specifically dolphins. Uh, I didn't know that dolphins were actually a part of the whole contact disclosure, you know, phenomena out there. I learned that afterwards once I had this interest. Dolphins. Also, I became a little slightly interested in the the cryptoid beings, specifically Sasquatch, and I had some experiences there in that first year that confirmed that existence for me too. Very synchronistic and actual physical evidence. But yeah, and I was enamored for, I remember, a week watching a lot of footage and studies on the Sasquatch phenomena. And that week after, I went up to Georgia. I was in the forest with my brother, and something told me to look up a hill. I looked up the hill and I saw this just pile, and I just went up the hill with my brother, and it was the same thing I had seen the week before that I had been looking at, these what are called Sasquatch structures, basically how wood sticks are arranged, usually near trees. This was exactly that, but it was something in my mind that was telling me to look there. So all of a sudden there was this Sasquatch element that came in. It just seems that once I opened the door to once I welcomed the possibility, the prospects of certain phenomena being real, it's like in that heightened state, because of my first contacts, there was an energy that was making it more actualized to me. You know, I just don't know how to measure that energy, but I know I was excited in those first days. So anything my interest was going to, I was getting a lot of confirmation. I watched a couple of Mike Cleland's videos on owls. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And I was so enamored with his stuff, and I went outside and owls showed up, and like they had not shown up for me ever in life. And it was amazing. Yeah, it was really amazing.
Well, what does this phenomena teach us about the law of attraction, in a sense, and the power of the manifestation of the mind?
What indeed? I think that's the crux of it. You know, it really is. It's the power of the mind. It's how the mind operates. What is this power, and how does it actually configure within the multiverse?
Right, and how much are we able to, as some have said, you know, create our reality, because we are creating this as we go along. What does it say about the fundamentalness of reality as well? You know,
exactly.
I mean, are we shifting realities as we shift our perspective of who we are and what we stand for?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I learned of that in my first year, in some of my quests for answers, connecting with the free research organization, basically within my first couple weeks of contact, and that was very serendipitous, right? I was part of my 3 questions, and what is free will, the nature of free will? Well, here was an organization that was specifically looking at the relationship of consciousness to phenomenological occurrences, and I had a lot of material to bask in there. It quickly led me down that scope, that position, that we are big players in it. Our mind capacity, our consciousness isn't even well, concepts like consciousness isn't even in the brain, you know. It's part of a field, and there's a collective consciousness. There's a unified consciousness field that we all tap into. Those things were very impressive to me, I would say, and that impression was kind of in those early months was very affirmative to me. It was like, I don't have to prove this. This is it. I found it. These are the truths. So the whole idea of me just being very open and like a sponge, I think was helping and aiding to educate me, to teach me without words. You know, like I said before, I didn't have direct communication from an entity or a being. It was more my own feeling that allowed for this transference and kind of transpersonal infusion of consciousness with this entity that I'm working with, that I'm committed to.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, we're going to get into a chapter that you've written as well just recently. There's many other things that we're going to try to just cram into this interview. And thank you so much for what you said so far. It's so interesting. You know, it just makes me think as well about the whole abduction phenomena, that I wonder if that experience is given to people as a way just to give them some reference for something that's actually not the way it's taking place, because it's so beyond our perception of understanding. That's when an abduction happens, it's not quite what we think it is.
Right. And I personally had not had any experience with that in my life that I can know of, and yet I was thrust into a group when I connected with Free Local group in Miami, that full of prime experiencers, as Joseph Burke's coined the term, prime experiencers. And I felt like I was on a, you know, I was so fringe, you know, with what I was doing. You know, I didn't have these kind of grays at the bedpost, you know, taking me up to a ship and then showing me screen visions and doing surgeries or, you know, soul connect. I didn't have anything like that. So the people that were around me testifying about their life events and who they were and who they had been identified as being, it was profound. I was astounded, and yet I knew that there was something even in this fringe aspect of where my position was within all of that. My practice was the accessible. You know, theirs wasn't something. Those events in their lives were random. They weren't something that they summoned. You know, it wasn't a repeat thing that they could make happen. In all of those testimonies, it was more like this was determined by these intelligences when and where those individuals would be contacted. But here, in my case, this was a practice that was repeatable. Anybody could do this. You know, this is something, and I really questioned at that point too whether they were even related. Whether this was extraterrestrial, had anything to do with grays and, you know, different.
It could be quite separate. It could be quite separate. Yeah, yeah.
Quite separate.
And maybe that's, you know, even they're seeing, or they have a better understanding of what this phenomena is, or maybe they are connected. But I think the one common thread between it all, if you speak to most of these abductees, in the end, they come around and see it as being a positive experience, that it shook them up to see a greater reality of consciousness, that they're more than their body. If anything, it came more towards that for a lot of it.
Yeah, that was the overwhelming finding of the study that Free did. You know, they did a lot of they documented a lot of taking consensus, taking what do you call it? They had input from over 4,000 participants expressing, and they asked a series of questions, and you know, then they did statistical analysis of these things, and they found that most people had come away having positive experiences.
Positive experience. And as you've said to me prior as well, that, you know, and I've mentioned this, it's teaching us through experience, sort of to use our imagination. That's what you've concluded in some of the stuff that you've experienced as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this speaks to a lot of the aesthetic practices in the East, whereby these practitioners will spend a lot of time in isolation, maybe years, and in deep contemplation, you know, they're configuring their minds and their spirits to lock into something specific for the purpose of self-awareness. And so I felt like this also was kind of lending to that. You know, this was another way, as it were, to achieve self-realization. You know, maybe even a shortcut, perhaps, because I wasn't a big meditator through the years. I still find it a bit hard to meditate. I'm not a meditator. So but I was finding, yet with this practice, I was still getting a lot of the same benefits. You know, there's definitely a mindfulness meditation that goes on. With this stuff, it just was very natural for me to start thinking of my surroundings, myself, what I'm feeling during all these events. After having so many events,
right? Yeah, seeing it from that perspective,
into different subtle areas that you're not always. That's really and that's where imagination, intuition, all of those things really come in. And I think that those are key elements to our advancement.
Yes. And I know that I sort of planned to talk over some of the videos that you had shared with me, because we've been playing some clips of random footage throughout this interview of images that you've captured. And just very quickly as well, let's just discuss the documentary, because I mean, that's not something you plan to do, right? To make a documentary on this, and it's a great documentary. It's called Sky with Diamonds, and that's available on your YouTube channel. The links is in the links below. Sky Family Connector is your YouTube channel. What led you to do the documentary? How long did it take to put together, and was it something that you felt drawn to do?
Yeah, I'm an artist. I'm a visual artist, a portrait artist, and a musician as well. So I was so enamored with the idea of music being connected to this too. Sound, you know, in the beginning, sound and music were part of my something that my mind went to immediately in the first days, that there was a deep relation to sound frequency, and me being a musician, it filled me up. And so as an artist and a musician, I think that video was just a media that I had to get into with this, because there was a lot of footage that I had, and some ideas that I had just seemed not to be so much out there. I didn't hear a lot of the ideas that were coming to me being, you know, professed from too many other sources.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, one of the things that people may say is, well, you know, these could just be balloons. They look like balloons. Their action behaviors seem like balloons. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I've actually come with my own name for them, my own term, which is kind of sticking. I like it. They're called anomaloons. So, you know, that's part of the phenomena, isn't it? That they are balloons. I say that they actually, my idea is that they actually are balloons. Now, whether they are replicated by some kind of device, or whether they are teleported, I don't know. I have some indication to tell me that there's a teleportation process going on, that these are actually commandeered balloons, but not only balloons, also any other lightweight object that can become easily airborne in the sky. I've seen it all. And all of these things exhibit behaviors that go beyond the observation of common debris and, you know, wind just simple wind trajectory. Behaviors actually where it'll start in one position and move and do different things, obviously being controlled. And even the one thing that I could say, which I didn't have on film, unfortunately, but even if I had it on film, skeptics would think I did it with digital effects, which was an event where I was in my room and I was looking out, and I looked at one point in the sky, and right where I looked, it must have been only 50 feet too. It wasn't too high, it wasn't too far up, it was close. Right where I looked, the balloon appeared. Like it wasn't there, and I was right where my eyes were. I just saw it come into view, like a special effect on a movie. It looked like a hologram actually being projected. I was astounded. That one event, I'd had many before. That happened later. I think that might have even happened a year later. But that one event, I would have never had to see anything else except for that one to show me that balloons aren't always what they appear to be, because that balloon appeared, as I said, it just looked like a fade-in effect that you do on video editing, where you just fade one scene into another, and you superimpose there's a superimposed image and going into the other. It just looked like that. It faded into existence.
Well, I mean, that's the issue with some researchers nowadays. They just won't take any video footage because it's so easy to sort of fake it as well. Even though some of the fakes you can tell a mile off, but some of them it's just a few of them are getting better, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's difficult for people to, to take that seriously sometimes. But I mean, you had your experience. It's your personal experience. This really happened for you. So you don't need to, you're not here to prove it to you. You're just here to share it in a sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And also the fact that the common cliche for a misidentified UFO is a balloon, a weather balloon, right? So seeing balloons is going to be that much more deniable, let's say, by the skeptics out there, which I don't blame them. It doesn't. It's a far cry from the standard fare of ufology, right? To identify a sky-borne object that's not a craft, right? Like, these are not crafts. These are not discs. They're not UFOs, like piloted ships. These are meta objects, what I call them. An object that really has taken on a life of its own. There's a bit of animism to consider here, that it's animated by some other kind of phenomena that has nothing to do with the nature of mylar balloons in of themselves.
Yes, but there are orbs that you've captured as well, orb anomalies, which is a little bit different as well.
A little bit different. Well, the nighttime captures are completely different. They're what I call starships, and I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people that have footage of these, but what I've seen with them is enough to prove to me that they're definitely not satellites or any other kind of aircraft. They look like moving stars, and those that look like moving stars might be argued by people to be, hey, that must be a satellite. But I've seen those moving stars do things that shows that they're not satellites, and that's all it took for me to realize that, yes, these. Now, whether they're related to the balloons, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I can't say. Again, I have had no information forthcoming to tell me. Yes, we're the balloon controllers, or the balloons are our brothers.
Yeah. Well, there's also obviously this is not just in America. This is worldwide, right? And this has been going on for a long time, not just a recent phenomenon either. No, it's been going on for definitely. It's been researched for at least a decade now. But not too many people are jumping on board, simply again because it simply does not fit within the paradigm of ufology yet.
It's an object that has no rhyme or reason. There's no actual objective course of action that is happening here that one could say, oh, that's why it's happening, or that's how it's happening. Or it's really so many questions.
Absolutely. And have you been surprised where this has sort of taken you as well? Because you've met a lot of people through this type of work as well.
Yeah, I love it. I love when I'm able to show people actual physical, man on the street kind of events. And I've had a couple of those that were profound, massive, I could mention. And yes, the researchers that I've been able to speak to, sharing their thoughts with me, opening up more of the the ideas that have been studied. And I really like that. I really like that this time is full of so much study in consciousness. So many different things are being put out there. It's really shifting the scientific paradigm.
Well, do you think we're at a sort of crossroads in a sense?
Yeah, I do. I do think we're at a crossroads. I do think that we're at a time where different things are converging, different forces are converging in the world, or clashing, as it were, and I think that to me spells that we're at a pivotal point, the point of transition. And I've had some events where I put that idea out there strongly and got responses in the sky, active responses, just speaking about shift in the earth, asking for assistance, asking to even help me to transform, energetically transform the people through maybe some kind of energetic pulse that could be added to me. I've asked for this, I've kind of put myself out there as a guinea pig, basically. I say use this body, to create a field that goes out into the four directions, that emits the deepest aspects of love and empathy that I feel. If I could put that field out there and just have it expand from like a torus energy from my body and cover the earth, let's do it together.
Yeah, well, that's how it makes you feel when you have these experiences. Yeah, you want to share that, and you are sharing stuff because you've also done a chapter as well in a book, and I'd like you to read that chapter off if that's okay.
Sure. I start off a basic little intro. I say the whole thing brings a little smile to my face, one of humility as much as it is of certainty. I'm smiling in my humility, knowing that at the present time, only a subset of those interested in the UFO phenomena who learn about balloon meta experiences would believe that our claims could be real. In one sense, the experience is more enigmatic than a quote-unquote standard ET contact story, because there is no intelligence that has revealed itself or has otherwise been confirmed to be the brains behind the operation of metaforms. At least the testimonies which describe meetings, interactions with greys, have purportedly objective purpose to them. Balloons are not part of the abductee phenomena, though. It's as well, of course, a giant hurdle to document anomaloon metaform experiences when a balloon is the cliche explanation for a misidentified UFO sighting. The fact, too, that they are plainly balloons, plastic bags, other featherweight man-made objects means the whole device could be some man-made technological apparatus, but this is unlikely in my opinion. I'm also aware of the dense forest of uncritical, Hollywood-esque assumptions about ETs and UFOs and made-up stuff out there at a time when sporting YouTubers and CGI aficionados offer fantastically enhanced content with elaborate explanations. As for serious UFO researchers, one would be hard-pressed to find any who will address the enigma of the telepathic UFO as a metaform that is not a craft or a drone. I can understand being a serious and emboldened skeptic ufologist having a disdain for the incredulous and having impatience for hoaxes that might pollute and delegitimize research. Even though most might agree that there are unknowns in the field, I suppose some things in the what I call the natural mystic simply sound too over the top for most people's intellectual sensibilities. But if you dig into this balloon enigma, you will be forced to totally suspend the objectivity of your rational mind. Getting into your young child mind will play a big role in establishing your practice. And that I must say, it doesn't leave you with much in the way of anything like an explanation or identification. Nevertheless, I smile when I think about the quality of my experience that has allowed me to have time to try and process what is, as of this writing, 3+ years of an ongoing, true, and most puzzling mystery. I also smile from the implications of something this inexplicable being so accessible. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth to take in from that statement as well, that chapter. And that chapter is going to be part of?
That's a part of the new book put out by the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, which is kind of the daughter of the Free organization. Basically, Free's work was completed, and this was formed as more of a layman's testimonial book to kind of just bring out testimonies from people, whereas the other one was more of an academic work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that will be out sometime this year.
Yeah, the whole thing what happened during the year had kind of kept it from coming out, but I think towards the end of the year, the hard copy will come out, and mine will be, my contribution will be in the ebook version.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we'll link that down below when that comes out as well. Remember to update the description below. And just very briefly as well, because I know we're almost at the end of this interview, for those thinking, okay then, so what makes you see something? If I'm going to go outside, how is that contact going to be initiated?
I think it's going to be initiated by your one's general interest. If one is interested and one feels anticipates something that's going to be amazing and mind-blowing, just the energy of that just the excitement level generated behind that, I feel is enough. I feel that's really enough. I don't think I would have had such success had I been with somebody who was really engaged and I wasn't. I just don't know if I would have had the continued success, if it wasn't in my heart to really pursue it and really, really just take in the fascination.
Yeah, absolutely. And just very finally, what would be an important message? I think you've said a lot of important messages, but if there's anything you just want to add to this, you can do.
Well, I think it's a great practice for the people out there right now. There's a lot of people that are feeling, let's say, degenerated from everything that's going on in the world. And I think this comes at a time, and it can be a great assistance to us as a species, helping us to redefine what it means to be a cosmosapien, redefining what it means to be interconnected, because now we have evidence, plain evidence that we can connect telepathically with accessible. So perhaps we should open up our ideas about this and let be in contemplation and be in humility over it, being cautious and humble, and realizing that this is something we should be wise about, because it can help us out in our own interconnection amongst each other. which is very sorely needed.
Absolutely, it is. And you don't have a website, just the YouTube channel right now, isn't it?
Just the YouTube channel, yeah,
that's
Sky
perfect.
Family.
Yeah, Sky Family Man. Okay, well, that's linked below. Jada, I just want to say just thank you so much for coming on today, and I will get you back on because there is so much to talk about with this, and I'd like to see where you go on your journey as well. So I'll definitely be getting you back on in the not too distant future.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. It was really a pleasure. I'm always excited to talk about this with the people.